Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Data Breaches, where we cover 5 of the most interesting data breaches from this last week. I'm Steve.
I'm Connor.
And I'm Frank.
So in this episode, we have billion user data leaks, racing scandals, and insider sabotage, somehow all making sense. Buckle up because hackers are driving this week like it's Daytona and no one's wearing a seatbelt. Starting with story number 1, we have X, which just got smacked with a leak so big it basically includes the entire internet. Over 2.8 billion user records allegedly leaked, and insiders are pointing fingers at, well, actual insiders. That's right. This is allegedly an inside job. Classic.
That's a fun one. What is that? Little over a fourth of the Earth's entire population. So when you put that into perspective, it's got to feel like everyone that has a Twitter account, plus their Twitter alts and any other second, third, fourth profiles they may have are compromised. From my perspective, are people really paying attention to this anymore? I mean, we've got Twitter getting these kind of exposures regularly, it feels like now, or X, LinkedIn. So at this point, I think anything you put on social media, go ahead and consider it compromised in advance just to be safe. But yeah, 2.8 billion, that's almost an incomprehensible number.
I saw the leak was then merged with a well-known 2023 dataset that had email addresses, creating the Frankenstein file that confused the hell out of everyone. And X hasn't issued a single word in response, with its vibe of ignore it and it will just go away or trend somewhere else. Now, most of the leak data is technically public, but stitched together at some scale. I see a powerful map of user behavior with a touch of less consent files. This is like having your private diary read out loud, but the diary is just your tweets and the audience is every bot on the planet. So yeah, proving that a rebrand doesn't fix rot somehow.
This feels like Twitter almost bragging that they have 3 billion users. Like, hey, look at us. Also, they got rid of like 80% of their workforce. So it could be that the person in charge of responding to breaches doesn't work there anymore. Fascinating story for number 1. Let's move on to story number 2. This is Oracle breach part 2, allegedly. After getting hacked a few weeks ago, they have a sequel, and this is not a good one. This time, client login data got stolen. If you're an Oracle customer, welcome to your identity crisis arc. I'm accepting names like Oracle, Return of the Breach, Oracle Back to the Future of Breaches, and any other names you may want to submit.
Oracle is in a hot streak. We mean repeatedly tripping over its own legacy system. Officially, they are calling it a non-event, like nothing to see here, obsolete servers. Unofficially, researchers and likely some users confirm that data is real, ready for phishing. Oracle is trying its best to put out the fire by insisting that the cloud wasn't touched. Like somehow this would make a huge difference to the average user being phished.
So what, twice in 2 months, right? I like the back to the breaches too. This is interesting because it feels like a pattern now. If we look at the first one, it's kind of hard getting information on the reporting in terms of these 2 breaches. It seems like the pattern of large data breach, denial, slow admittance. And then we're kind of seeing that again, potential large data breach. And it's an old server that hasn't been used in 8 years. And then I've seen some things saying there might be some stuff that's 16 months old on that server that was breached. So we'll see. But it seems like information and truth will slowly come to light. But yeah, 2 and 2 months, as Frank said, a little bit of a hot streak, but hopefully things quiet down on that front for the sake of Oracle.
Maybe they watch too much White Lotus and they're like, what is a breach? Isn't all data made up anyway?
Data's fake, right?
All right, moving on. Story number 3. Samsung Electronics, Germany, customer satisfaction breached. So Samsung Electronics, Germany, had their customer satisfaction tickets leaked, over 270 records. This includes names, addresses, emails, complaints like my fridge tried to update itself at 3 a.m. You can see this was released on breached forums. And we have someone out there reading your disappointed but polite customer service emails and roasting you likely in a Discord server. What do you guys think about that?
So obviously there's some real implications with some sensitive PII getting out there, but I'm sure there's some, we'll call them friendly navigators of the dark web looking at this file. And like you mentioned, interesting complaints like my fridge tried to update itself at 3 a.m. or my remote is talking to me, right? So there's definitely going to be some interesting things, I would imagine, from a customer satisfaction ticket database from a company that large with that many customers. I'm sure there's some fun stuff in there. But yeah, there's also, right, sensitive PII on a serious note, which opens the door for social engineering. And I'm assuming with 270,000 records, there's a lot to play with.
What's going to happen when people start complaining about the fridge talking to them or something? I got to point out that the threat actor was using credentials stolen 4 years ago to breach Samsung's support system. That's 4 years of someone not rotating their passwords, customer names, emails, orders, like Steve said, complaints, just waiting to start a fire. This company, Spectals, they are behind the same mess on a recent royal breach too, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, at this point, Spectals is less a vendor and more a walking warning sign. This surely doesn't make them look in good shape.
It's always fun when your customer service complaints are available to everyone to read, especially hackers. I'm sure that they have nothing but good intentions with what details they learn.
It's also fun that we live in a world with fridges that have built-in AI, but also at the same time, passwords that are the exact same for 4 years.
Moving on to story number 4, and this one's a fast one. I'm going to call this one Fast and the Hacked. Tokyo Drift. NASCAR got hit with a data breach by the Medusa ransomware gang. The attack reportedly leaked over 1 terabyte of corporate data. That's not just a data spill, that's a data Daytona 500.
Wow. That's too much for me.
Wait, let me redo the
Absorbed.
1,000 gigabytes. I was really trying to channel my...
Okay, I'm going to add something to that. Wow, that's a 4 million ransom, and NASCAR hasn't said a word. Race enthusiasts may say, if you ain't first, you're last. But what about having detailed layouts of major public venues in criminal hands? Medusa's blog post shows everything with screenshots and ticking clock that I see. And it's hard to imagine a more inconvenient moment for silence, especially when federal agencies have been literally shouting from the rooftops about Medusa's tricks and tactics in recent advisories. Yeah, it sounds to me they're about to crash and burn.
And on the subject of if you ain't first, you're last, I wonder what Ricky Bobby has to say about this. In all seriousness, right? At first glance, maybe obviously NASCAR is a large corporation, but why NASCAR? And $4 million ransom, I think is what you said, Franco, which is a lot of money. But yeah, you look at what NASCAR does, think about the venues, the employees, the sponsorships, money that's moved between. If you're not living in the South, you might not know how big NASCAR gets. There's a lot of money floating around, and there's a lot going from a sponsorship perspective. So with 1,000 gigabytes of data, you can imagine there's probably a good amount of those types, records pertaining to those high value, high dollar sponsorships, employees, etc., floating in there. So we'll see what NASCAR has to say.
It's pretty funny.
Allegedly,
They wrote it out as 1,000 gigabytes.
it's
It's a terabyte, but 1,000 gigabytes sounds way more impressive. Like, oh man, that's a lot. Except for I have 100 terabytes just sitting in some spinny drives. All right.
Medusa watching too much Austin Powers.
This one is hitting locally. If you're in Chattanooga, Tennessee, this is about you. So the city of Chattanooga got hit through national-wide recovery services, a vendor handling collections. So this is the cybersecurity equivalent of leaving your spare key with a neighbor who immediately gets robbed. Chattanooga, Tennessee, looks like a nice town, but not a nice breach.
So they were hit through a debt collector. If I was investigating this, I would wonder if there's anyone on that debt collector's list that might be incentivized to take action. When you talk about the city, as a citizen, you have to disclose all your sensitive data, right? PI, social security number, likely your finances, utilities, all of that. That data is compromised with these earlier breaches, social engineering, identity theft. This happens more than we think, and hoping for the best for the citizens of Chattanooga.
Chattanooga.
That's a Chattanooga.
Chattanooga.
What,
You said
Chattanooga.
Chattanooga. It's not Chattanooga. It's
It all sounds the same.
Chattanooga.
They found out they were part of the data breach nearly 2 months after the fact through a letter dated February that only surfaced in late March. Leak came out via nationwide recovery services. Yeah, well, because if there's one industry with flawless digital security standards, that must be debt collection. The city says only collection-related data was affected, which may not be quite enough of an for anyone wondering how their information ended up in the mess. Now, again, I'm thinking that the issue is not likely that itself, but the lag in warning people. Officials are now promising an investigation into why this flew under the radar. When it takes 50 days to realize your vendor spilled your data, maybe the investigation should have started.
50 days is a
Chattanooga.
long time for a breach. Disclosure. It's a bit of a wait. All right. Final thoughts. Who had NASCAR and Twitter on their breached bingo board? Not me. To recap, Twitter lost everyone's data, 2.8 billion records. Oracle had a sequel that we didn't really expect. Samsung customer complaints are now being read by hackers. NASCAR is in the fast lane with their breach, and Chattanooga, they wanted to collect some bills, and now they are in the darknet. Which breach was your favorite? Drop a comment. Let's go ahead and change those passwords while we're at it. 4 years is far too long. And with that, thanks everyone. Till next time.